The smell of burnt coffee curled around me as I watched my husband panic close the text thread he thought I didn't see. Still, I kept stirring my cup, letting the spoon tap the rim like a quiet metronome against his lies. As the bitter scent deepened, it clung to my throat the way his excuses always tried to. While the steam rose, I finally noticed how calm my hands felt without him holding them. The same sour aroma reminded me what betrayal truly smells like. That's when I decided, some people reveal themselves and some doors never open for them again. Before we start, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. If you enjoy the story, please hit like, subscribe, and join our community. It really helps us grow. The first thing I noticed was the sound, the sliding door gliding open behind me, letting in a burst of laughter and warm backyard air. I was standing at the kitchen island, icing the last tray of cupcakes, the sugary smell mixing with the charcoal drifting in from the grill. Kids were shrieking in the bounce house, balloons tapping against each other like soft little heartbeats. It should have been a perfect moment. But it was, because when I glanced up, I saw them. Ryan and Chloe. Fingers laced. Not a polite handhold, not a steadying touch. Intertwined like something private, something practiced. For half a second, maybe less, they froze in the doorway. Their bodies went rigid, smiles flickering off their faces like blown-out candles. Chloe's eyes darted to mine, wide and startled, and Ryan's expression twisted into something like guilt before he smoothed it over. Then Chloe laughed, too loud, too bright, too fake, and snatched her hand away from his. "Oh my God," she said, brushing her hair back like a nervous teenager. "I almost slipped on the driveway, these stupid heels." She lifted one foot to show the heel, wobbling dramatically. The performance was so over the top it made my stomach tighten. The tile under my feet felt suddenly cold, like I was rooted to the spot. Before I could even respond, my mom swooped in from behind me, arms open, voice pitched high with the kind of delight she rarely used for me. "Clobear, you made it," she sang out, hugging her. "You look gorgeous. Maya, stop staring, sweetheart. Don't make everything weird today. It's Sophie's birthday." I felt the words hit me, soft tone, sharp edge. My face flushed and I forced my attention back to the cupcakes even though my hands were shaking. My mom squeezed Chloe again like nothing strange had happened, like she hadn't just seen my husband holding my sister's hand. Maybe she really hadn't noticed. Or maybe she didn't want to. Ryan finally stepped forward with that polished smile he used for work, friendly, harmless, practiced. He leaned in, kissed my cheek, and his breath brushed my ear as he whispered, "You're seeing things. She was just nervous about being late." Nervous, right? His voice was gentle, but the message was anything but, "Don't start." Outside, the bounce house squeaked with every jump, and beyond the mesh I saw Jenna looking at me from the yard. She had a paper plate in her hand, half loaded with fruit, and her eyebrows shot up in a silent, unmistakable, "Did you see that?" I gave the smallest shake of my head, not no, but not here, not now. My throat felt tight, like something was lodged in it, and I didn't trust myself to speak. "Mommy." Sophie barreled into the kitchen, her hair flying, her face flushed with joy. She tugged on my dress with her frosting sticky fingers. "Why is Aunt Chloe holding Daddy's hand?" she asked, loud enough that the couple next to the fridge glanced over. My heart tripped, stumbling in my chest. Chloe's face blanched. Ryan pretended to be amused, rubbing the back of his neck as if the comment were adorable. Parents nearby shifted, trying not to seem like they were listening, though of course they were. Everyone always hears the thing you pray they won't. I crouched down to Sophie's level, brushing a crumb off her cheek. "Sweetie," I said, keeping my smile steady, "go check if the cake table is still standing. I think the wind is trying to steal your sprinkles." She giggled and ran off, blonde ponytail bobbing. When I stood again, the kitchen felt too small, too warm, too crowded with lies no one wanted to name. Ryan had already wandered toward the grill to joke with my dad. Chloe adjusted her shirt and pretended to examine the party decorations like she was the hostess. And I just stood there, staring at the frosting on my fingers, my breath catching in my chest. I didn't make a scene, I didn't ask the question burning through me, I didn't stop the party. But a decision settled inside me, quiet, heavy, solid. Once the last balloon sagged and the last guest left, I was done pretending I hadn't seen what I saw. I was getting answers. By the time the sun set and the last kid's goodie bag was claimed, my backyard looked like a battlefield of wilted balloons and half-trampled stria. Mers, inside, the kitchen lights felt harsh, almost accusatory, bouncing off the stainless steel appliances and the sticky countertop where frosting smears had dried. The air still held that thick mix of charcoal, sugar, and everyone else's laughter, everyone except mine. Chloe sat on one of the bar stools like she owned the place, legs crossed, scrolling her phone with quick little taps of her acrylic nails. The sound was sharp, rhythmic, almost taunting. Ryan leaned against the counter a few feet away, sipping from a glass of leftover lemonade, shoulders relaxed like he hadn't spent the whole day dodging my eyes. He looked like a guest who had overstayed his welcome, not my husband helping clean up after his daughter's birthday party. I tied the last trash bag, the plastic crackling as I twisted it and set it by the door. My chest felt heavy, but my voice came out soft when I finally asked, "Why were you two holding hands earlier?" It wasn't an accusation, it wasn't even loud, just a question, a simple one. Chloe's head snapped up. She gasped dramatically, one hand flying to her chest like she was auditioning for a soap opera. "Oh my God, Maya," she said, dragging out my name. "I slipped on the driveway. Ryan caught me, that's all." She rolled her eyes in a big, theatrical circle. "You sound crazy." The word hit me like a slap, crazy. She said it so casually, like it was a fact. Ryan didn't even hesitate before jumping in. "Yeah," he said, shrugging, voice calm and reasonable in that way that made me question myself. "You're overanalyzing everything again. Chloe's already insecure around couples. You calling it something gross just makes her feel worse." I blinked. I didn't call it gross, I just— "You implied it," Chloe cut in, her tone clipped as she slid off the stool. She stood now, facing me, her perfume, something overly sweet like spun sugar clinging to the air. "Honestly, I can't believe this is what you took from today." The words piled on, each heavier than the last. Ryan shook his head. "You really need to stop jumping to conclusions. It ruins the mood, and today was supposed to be special for Sophie." A familiar voice piped in, my mom, who was moving plates from counter to sink like she couldn't see the tension thickening in the room. "Sweetheart," she said over the scrape of plastic on porcelain, "you've always been too sensitive. Sisters can hold hands, don't make a mountain out of nothing." Her tone wasn't harsh, if anything, it was gentle, but that somehow made it worse, like she was soothing a child instead of acknowledging something real. I stood there, the weight of all three of them pressing in on me, pushing me into the smallest version of myself. My cheeks burned hot. The room felt tilted, like I had stepped into a scene I didn't recognize, where everyone else already knew their lines and I was the only one stumbling. "I okay?" I murmured, throat tight. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." The apology slipped out before I could stop it, a reflex carved from years of smoothing over other people's comfort at the cost of my own. Chloe let out a soft, triumphant exhale and went back to her phone. Ryan gave me a condescending half smile, as if the conversation was now neatly wrapped and tucked away. But inside me, something twisted, hard. Because the image wouldn't leave my mind. Their fingers intertwined, not a steadying grip, but something intimate, something soft, and the way they froze like a pair of thieves caught mid-theft. Later that night, when the house was quiet and Sophie was finally asleep, Ryan climbed into bed beside me without a word. He faced away, his back a solid wall under his t-shirt. The glow from his phone screen lit the sheets, the soft click of his typing filling the silence between us. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting with the movement of tree branches outside. My chest ached, not from jealousy, something deeper, something older. I had spent so many years letting people tell me what I saw, what I felt, what I should believe. But as Ryan's screen glowed inches from my face, I knew something had changed. I was done being talked out of my own reality. Today, I understand that the moment you start apologizing for what you saw with your own eyes is the moment you begin losing pieces of yourself. I wasn't going to lose any more. Sophie climbed into my lap the way she always did when she wanted something, quietly, gently, like a kitten easing onto a warm spot. But this time, her little hands gripped my shoulders tighter than usual. "Mommy," she whispered, her breath warm against my neck, "is Aunt Chloe going to live with us too?" My whole body went cold. The tiny glitter fleck I'd been pinching out of the rug slipped from my fingers. It was Tuesday evening, the kind where the house felt soft and lived in. The lamps were on low, the dishwasher hummed in the background, and Sophie sat at the coffee table coloring a unicorn while humming the birthday song, still stuck in he. Our head days after the party. The air smelled faintly of dish soap and the lavender spray I'd used earlier. Nothing in the room looked threatening. But the question did. I stroked her hair. "Why would she live with us, baby?" She kept coloring, pressing a pink marker hard into the paper. "Because Daddy and Aunt Chloe were whispering in the hallway. At my party, they said when we tell her and after the restaurant paperwork." She said it like she was repeating lines from a cartoon. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. "What paperwork?" Sophie shrugged, swinging her little legs. "I dunno, Daddy said it was a surprise, and that surprises are supposed to make you excited, but my tummy felt weird. Are surprises supposed to make your tummy hurt?" Her voice cracked just slightly, it almost broke me. I kissed the top of her head. "No, sweetheart, surprises shouldn't make your tummy hurt." But mine did. It twisted and pulled like something inside me had finally started to wake up. At dinner that night, with spaghetti steaming on our plates and the clink of forks filling the silence, I brought it up. calmly, as if my insides weren't trembling. Sophie said you and Chloe were talking at the party, I said, keeping my eyes on Ryan. Something about paperwork and telling me later. What was that? Ryan laughed too quickly, too loud, like he was trying to cover something. Oh God, Maya, she misunderstood. It was just adult talk. You know how kids mix things up. My phone buzzed on the table, family group chat. Chloe had written, OMG, Soph is so nosy face with tears of joy. My mom reacted with 3 heart emojis and a she's just curious. Of course she did. My mom loved any comment of Chloe's that made her sound cute. My dad, though, he didn't react. He just glanced at me, then at his phone, then down at his plate. His fork scraped slowly across the ceramic bowl, uneasy but silent. I sat there surrounded by people who looked at me like I was the one creating problems, like my instincts were some dramatic hobby I refused to give up. The humiliation hit in quiet waves. I hated that it still worked, that their dismissiveness still made me shrink. After dinner, I put Sophie to bed. Her room smelled like strawberry shampoo and crayons. She curled into her blankets the moment her head hit the pillow, her lashes fluttering like she was already halfway to dreaming. I lingered in the hallway after turning off her nightlight, letting the soft glow spill over my feet. I breathed in, out, tried to steady myself. Then I heard Ryan's voice in the living room, low, muffled, rushed. I took a few slow steps toward the doorway. The TV was on mute, the screen casting a cold blue tint across the room. Ryan sat hunched forward on the couch, phone pressed tight to his ear. We just have to wait till after I'm on the mortgage, he whispered. My heart dropped straight to the floor. Not slipped. Not misunderstood. Not adult talk. I stood there frozen, the shadows from the TV flickering across my hands. The word mortgage echoed in my skull like an alarm bell. My house, my inheritance, the one thing I had never touched because it felt like the only real safety I had. And now he was planning something tied to it. I backed away from the doorway before he noticed me, the floorboard under my heel creaking softly. My pulse thudded at the base of my throat. Something was happening behind my back, and I needed to know exactly what. Today I understand that children hear the truth long before adults are willing to say it out loud. Sophie wasn't confused, she was warning me. I just finally decided to listen. The stack of papers looked harmless at first, just crisp white pages fanned neatly across the dining table, catching the morning sunlight. But the moment Ryan slid them toward me with that too bright smile, something inside my chest folded in on itself. This is exciting, he said, tapping the top page with the pen he'd already uncapped. A fresh start, finally putting everything in both our names. His voice was almost cheerful. It didn't match the tension buzzing under my skin. We both had coffee mugs beside us, the steam already fading. Mine left faint rings on the corner of the paperwork, and for a strange second I was more focused on the rings than his words, like even my cup knew it didn't belong on those papers. Refinancing isn't scary, he added, leaning back in his chair like a salesman easing into his pitch. We can do renovations, upgrade the kitchen, maybe finish the basement. And honestly, he shrugged lightheartedly, I'm tired of feeling like a guest in my own home. My home, the house I inherited. The house fully paid off years before I even met him. I picked up the first page, the thick paper smooth under my fingertips. My eyes scanned the lines and the numbers hit me first. A large new loan, bigger than any renovation required. My name, his name, and a third. Chloe Collins, co-signer. I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor. Ryan R. Eached over like he was helping. Yeah, that part. Chloe's credit is cleaner than ours, less debt, you know? It helps us get a better rate. She's doing us a favor. A favor? My sister signing onto my house. My jaw tightened. Why is Chloe on this at all? Ryan's expression shifted in an instant, his upbeat tone replaced by irritation like I had ruined the mood he'd been carefully constructing. You're always suspicious, he said, rubbing his hand over his jaw. Chloe is helping us get a better rate. Family helps family. What is the problem with that? The problem was everything. Before I could respond, the front door opened, and my mother's voice floated in cheerful, too loud like she'd rehearsed her entrance. Hello, I thought I'd check on you too. Oh, paperwork. She set her purse down, already smiling at the stack. Is this the refinance Chloe mentioned? Good for her stepping up to help. My spine stiffened. She mentioned it to you. My mom waved a dismissive hand. Well, yes, of course. She said you might overthink it, so I told her I'd pop in. Then in that patronizing tone she reserved for me, she added, Sweetheart, don't punish Chloe for trying to be responsible. You don't exactly understand all this financial jargon. Punish. Responsible. Overthink. Each word chipped away at the ground under my feet. Ryan nodded eagerly like my mother was his supporting witness. Exactly. This is fair, Maya. We should be a team. You're lucky I'm willing to take on debt with you. Most men wouldn't. The air left my lungs in one slow, cold exhale. Lucky. For tying my paid-off house to a massive loan. Lucky because he'd decided he deserved part of something that wasn't his. I placed the papers down carefully, lining them up with trembling fingers. Then I slid the pen across the table to him, not throwing it, just pushing it back like it burned. I'm not signing anything today, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'm sending this to Erica first. His jaw clenched instantly, not fear, anger, controlled, simmering anger. If you bring lawyers into this, he said quietly, you'll make things ugly. I met his stare. Ugly as pretending I should sign away my house without understanding why my sister's name is on the documents. My mom let out a soft, annoyed sigh. Ryan looked like he wanted to argue more, but something in my expression must have stopped him. Because I wasn't budging. Not this time. As I gathered my coffee mug and stood, my hands felt steadier than they had in days. He thought involving a lawyer would make things ugly. But deep down, I already knew the truth. The ugliness had been here all along. I just hadn't called it by its name yet. Today, I understand that the moment someone pressures you to sign something fast is the moment you slow down, because real love never requires blind signatures. The house felt too quiet the night everything finally snapped into focus. Not peaceful quiet in that hollow, aching way that makes you aware of every small sound. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint tick of the hallway clock, my own breathing thin and uneven. Ryan had rushed out an hour earlier for a late delivery issue at the restaurant, his words tossed over his shoulder as he grabbed his keys. He'd left his phone on the couch, face down, still warm when I picked up a throw blanket. I remember noticing the warmth before anything else, like the phone had a pulse. I didn't think much of it at first, I just set it back down. Then the notification popped up. A small vibration against the cushion, a soft glow in the dim living room. Cloud backup needs permission to sync, and right underneath it, a thumbnail, a blurry but unmistakable frame. Chloe's face. Her hair spread across my pillow. My hands went cold instantly. I stared at the image, hoping, praying that it was something else. A joke, a mistake, a glitch. But my thumb moved on its own. I tapped. The video opened with the sound first, soft rustling, breathy laughter. Then the image sharpened and my bedroom came into view. My headboard, my lamp, my sheets, and my sister wearing one of my old t-shirts leaned forward on our bed while Ryan moved behind her. I felt my entire body go numb. They had set the phone up on the dresser, angled deliberately. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment mistake. This was documented, recorded, saved. Between their moans and breathless giggles, their voices cut through the fog in my brain. She really has no idea, Chloe asked, her voice light and mocking. Ryan laughed, actually laughed. She sees what she wants to see. She's comfortable in her little party balloon world. Party balloon world. They turned my daughter's birthday, my business, my entire life into a punchline. My throat tightened until it hurt. I forced myself to keep watching because some part of me needed to witness every piece of the truth. Halfway through the clip, their tone shifted. Chloe rolled onto her back, tossing her hair across my pillow, and said, "So once you're on the mortgage and I help with the loan, we can finally move in, right?" Ryan kissed her shoulder. "Yeah, officially. After that, we'll figure out the Sophie situation." The Sophie situation. My daughter reduced to a complication. Chloe laughed softly. I can be her real mom once she gets used to it. Real mom. My chest caved, the room spun. I clutched the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. The video ended, but another thumbnail waited below it, then another, and another. I opened them one by one, every clip slicing deeper. Them on the couch where Sophie and I read bedtime stories. Them in the kitchen where I baked birthday cakes. Them in the shower, my shower, where I cried on nights when I thought I was losing my mind. They used every part of the home I protected, the home I inherited, the home they were planning to steal from beneath me. At some point, my vision tunneled. I dropped the phone, the thud echoing off the hardwood floor. My breath came fast and shallow. My hands shook so violently I had to brace myself on the arm of the couch. But then something strange happened, something sharp and cold and clarifying. I picked the phone back up. And I started forwarding everything. Every clip, every screenshot, every timestamp. To my secure email. To a hidden cloud folder. To Erica, my cousin, my lawyer, the one person who would not gaslight me, who would not tell me I was imagining things. Each send felt like digging my fingers into a cliffside, pulling myself up inch by inch from a sinkhole I didn't even know I'd been standing over. By the time the last file uploaded, my tears had dried sticky on my cheeks. The TV across the room was off, its black screen reflecting my face, eyes red, mouth trembling, a woman who looked like she'd been cracked open. But under the devastation, something new pulsed, quiet but fierce. I knew two things with absolute certainty. My marriage was over, and I wasn't confronting them yet. Not until I had a plan sharp enough to cut through whatever they tried next. Not until I could protect Sophie and myself from the wreckage they were already building. Today, I know that the moment the truth breaks you is also the moment it begins to rebuild you, just not into the version they ever expected. The next morning, I poured coffee for my husband and my sister with a smile that felt like it might slice my cheeks open. The kitchen was washed in pale morning light, the kind that usually made the room feel warm and safe, but nothing felt safe now. Not with the knowledge sitting heavy under my ribs, the videos, the laughter, the plans they whispered when they thought I was oblivious. Ryan and Chloe were already at the kitchen island when I walked in. They sat too close, shoulders angled toward each other, voices low and private. So maybe Saturday, Chloe murmured, tapping something on her phone. The new development looked nice. Ryan hummed approvingly, bigger yards, better schools. Their conversation dropped off the second they noticed me. Then came the overcorrection, bright smiles, cheerful voices, a wave of fake normal. Morning, babe, Ryan said, straightening in his seat. We were just talking about weekend plans. Chloe held up her phone with a Pinterest board pulled up, white kitchens, rainfall showerheads, and airy living rooms. Renovation inspo, I thought you'd love these, May. Her voice was sugar-coated, the kind she used when she wanted to cover something sour. I placed a mug in front of her, then Ryan. My hands didn't shake. That almost scared me, the eerie calm sitting on top of everything I felt. Ryan leaned in to kiss my cheek, and for a split second I saw Chloe's face in my bed, laughing as she asked if I really had no idea. I forced myself not to recoil. So, he said casually, have you thought more about the refinance? Chloe chimed in immediately. Yeah, if we knock down that wall, the whole space will open up. It'll look so much more modern. Why, our... Like they had already moved in. I stirred my own coffee slowly. It's a big decision. I want to understand everything before we move forward. Ryan gave a soft laugh. You worry too much, that's why you have me. Chloe brushed his arm with her hand, accidentally, as she reached for a napkin. Then she giggled at something he hadn't even said. Every touch, every too long glance hit me like a small electric shock. But instead of screaming, I slid into a chair and asked lightly, how's the restaurant doing this month? Busy enough to support a renovation right now? Ryan hesitated just for a breath. It's fine, he said quickly, normal ups and downs. And your new job? I asked Chloe, keeping my tone neutral. She blinked, it's good, busy. Her foot tapped under the stool, restless. I murmured, good. For a moment, the kitchen felt tight, crowded with unsaid things. Then I dropped my first pebble into the water. Oh, by the way, I said, pouring more cream into my cup, I sent the mortgage due. Cumins to Erica, she loves paperwork, you know. It was small, softly delivered, almost forgettable. But the reaction was instant. Chloe's smile twitched. Ryan's cup hit the counter a little too hard. You did what? He asked, still trying to sound playful. I had questions, I said easily. She'll explain the parts I don't understand. Ryan clenched his jaw. Lawyers are expensive, Maya, you never trust anyone. Chloe pouted like a scolded child. You never let me help with anything, I'm trying to be responsible for once. Before I could respond, my mom swept into the kitchen with forced cheer. Just here to see Sophie, she announced, then proceeded to critique my cabinets, my counters, my organization. You know, she said pointedly, Chloe deserves something of her own too, don't shut her out. It was too perfect, too aligned, like she was reading lines from a script someone handed her. I packed Sophie's lunch quietly, listening to the crinkle of wrappers, the soft clatter of her water bottle. She chatted about school, her voice bright and unburdened. I held onto that sound like a lifeline. Because beneath my calm, I was making a decision. I would keep playing along, smiling, nodding, pretending. Just long enough to protect my house. Just long enough to freeze what they thought they were taking. And just long enough to make sure that when this finally exploded, every single person who doubted me would have front row seats. Erica's office always smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old law books, a mix of sharp and warm that somehow steadied me the moment I stepped inside. The blinds were half closed, letting in narrow stripes of afternoon light that cut across her desk like quiet pathways. I held the folder of screenshots against my chest so tightly my fingers ached. Sit, she said gently, motioning to the chair across from her. I did, and when I set the folder down between us, something in me loosened, just a fraction. Like placing the evidence on her desk meant I didn't have to carry it in my body alone anymore. She opened it, clicked her pen, and began scrolling through the videos on my phone. Her jaw tightened almost immediately. Not dramatic, not shocked, controlled, but furious on my behalf. They recorded themselves, she muttered under her breath, shaking her head once. Idiots. Her professionalism never faltered, though. She took notes, quick, precise strokes, pausing only when a new detail required a clarifying question. How long do you think this has been going on? Months, I whispered, maybe longer. She didn't comfort me, she didn't gaslight me, she didn't tell me I was overreacting. She just nodded, confirming something I had begun to feel deep down. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a coordinated effort to take something from me. When she finished the last clip, she exhaled slowly. Okay, she said, tell me everything else. So I did. I told her about the refinance proposal, the documents Ryan pushed across the table, Chloe's name listed as a co-signer. I described the pressure, the guilt-tripping, the comments about being a team and fairness. I repeated the lines Sophie had overheard after he's on the mortgage, and the way my mom had conveniently appeared to encourage me to sign without reading closely. Erica listened without interrupting, her brows knitting tighter with each detail. When I finished, she opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, aging file with my grandmother's name on the tab. I remembered sitting beside my grandmother years ago in this same office, not understanding why she insisted on certain papers or signatures. Erica flipped through the file until she found the trust documents. Maya, she said, turning one page toward me, this house is in an irrevocable trust in your name only. Your grandmother insisted on it. Nothing can change that without your explicit, notarized consent and multiple new filings. Ryan can't be added. Chloe can't be added. No one can. A breath I didn't realize I'd been holding escaped me in a shaky gust. They can pressure you, she continued, but they can't touch the house unless you choose to let them. And based on what you've shown me, we may have grounds to argue attempted financial manipulation if they continue. I stared at the trust document, my name printed cleanly, securely, like it was a life preserver thrown into storm water. So I'm not trapped, I whispered. Erica leaned back in her chair, her gaze sharp but reassuring. You're not even cornered. In fact, you're in the strongest position in this entire situation. For the first time in days, the room didn't feel like it was spinning. I sat taller, my hands steadying on my knees. We need a plan, she said, flipping to a fresh legal pad page. Here's the sequence. She laid it out like a map. Quietly copy every piece of paperwork. Pull full financial statements, his, mine, ours. Open a separate checking account for my business and emergency funds. Prepare divorce documents. Prepare custody filings. Keep calm. Keep acting normal. And the moment I said the word, she would file everything with precision. My pulse quickened, not with fear, but with something like direction. Then she added, when you confront them, don't do it alone and don't do it at home. Choose a place where they care about their image, neutral enough that they can't explode, public enough that they can't twist the narrative. What about the restaurant? Ryan thinks he has power there. The idea slid into place like a puzzle piece I hadn't realized was missing. We finished reviewing the plan, step by step, until each part felt tangible, solid ground instead of the quicksand I'd been drowning in. When I finally stood to leave, Erica handed me a thicker folder than the one I'd brought in. Inside were instructions, next steps, documents ready for signatures when the time came. Walking out of her office, the air felt lighter, like the world had shifted half an inch back into alignment. My chest didn't feel hollow anymore, it felt fortified. Today I know that there's a moment in every unraveling where you stop being the one tangled in the mess and become the one holding the scissors. The lunch rush had already settled into a dull hum by the time I pushed open the restaurant door that afternoon. The smell hit me first, garlic, frying oil, something buttery browning on a stovetop. It clung to the air, to the wood beams, to the worn menus stacked near the host stand. It was familiar, comforting even. I'd spent years bringing Sophie here after school, celebrating small wins, pretending this place was part of our family's stability. But today I walked in with different eyes. Ryan stood near the center of the dining room, laughing too loudly at a joke he probably didn't hear, hand on a customer's shoulder like he owned the table. He moved from group to group with the swagger of someone giving a tour of his kingdom. I watched him refill water glasses, slap a coworker's back, gesture toward the specials board as if he wrote the recipes himself. The performance was almost impressive, if I didn't know the truth, sitting on my phone like a live wire. He hadn't seen me yet, so I slipped toward the bar where Mr. Delgado, the actual owner, was counting receipts. He looked up, squinting a moment before breaking into a warm smile. Maya, I didn't know you were coming by. His accent curled softly around my name, familiar and kind. Just wanted to grab lunch, I said, sliding onto a stool, and say hello. He nodded, closing the receipt book. Your parties have been good for us, parents talk. We've gotten several big weekend reservations after your events. You keep this place alive more than Ryan does. He chuckled, shaking his head. We should put you on the payroll. His words caught me off guard. You know about my business. Of course, he said. You're Maya, the kid's party planner, the one who brings in half the Saturday crowds. Ryan should be proud. I forced a polite laugh, my fingers tightening around the condensation on my water glass. For years, I'd been introduced here as Ryan's wife, an accessory to his ambitions. The idea that someone saw me, my work, as valuable felt strange, almost dangerous. Can I ask you something? I said, lowering my voice. Anything. Is Ryan on any ownership papers, or is he still salaried management? Delgado's laugh burst out instantly, big, unfiltered, genuine. Ownership? No, no, no. He waved a hand, still smiling. He talks like it's his place sometimes, but he's just salaried. Modest pay, a few bonuses when we have a good month, but no equity, no shares, not even partial. I felt something inside me shift, like a knot loosening, like a window opening. So the restaurant he bragged about, the future he waved in front of me like leverage, it didn't exist. Not the way he told it. I see, I murmured, letting that truth sink into the hollows where fear had been living. Delgado leaned in. You looking to expand your business? I've been thinking we could give you a discounted rate for events. You're reliable, and I prefer working with professionals who actually show up on time. The dig slid in quietly, but it wasn't meant for me. I smiled, a real one, I'd love that. Across the room, Ryan finally spotted me. He straightened, that fake restaurant owner energy snapping back into place. He raised a hand in a half wave, then turned to the bar, bragging loudly to a line cook about our plans and my place and future renovations he was apparently masterminding. I watched him, really watched him this time. The inflated confidence, the borrowed authority, the fantasy he built and believed because it made him feel big. His entire sense of power was a bubble, thin, delicate, ready to pop, and he didn't even know it. I finished my drink, thanked Delgado, and stood. As I pushed open the door to leave, the afternoon light poured over me. My phone buzzed in my hand. Without hesitation, I opened a new message thread with Erica, then Jenna. He doesn't own the restaurant, not even a piece. The only big thing he can grab is the house. And I already closed that door. Today I know that sometimes the loudest man in the room is standing on the weakest ground, and the quiet woman he underestimates is the one holding everything up. 2 weeks later, I walked into the private dining room of Ryan's favorite restaurant feeling like my bones were made of glass, but held together by something stronger than fear. The room was warm with low lighting, the walls covered in framed photos of past celebrations. A cake sat on the side table untouched. Menus rested neatly in front of every seat as if this were any normal family dinner. But nothing about tonight was normal. Ryan thought he'd arranged a meeting to finalize refinance plans. He had no idea he was stepping into the one room in the city I'd already turned into a stage. He was already there when I arrived, pacing with nervous excitement, one hand in his pocket, the other gesturing toward Chloe as he talked about future expansions and how this renovation will increase property value. Chloe sat with her legs crossed, scrolling her phone, pretending to be busy and important. My mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin, already emotional. I'm just so proud, she said to no one in particular, to see my girls supporting each other like this. My dad sat beside her, stiff and silent, twisting his wedding band the way he did when he sensed something was very wrong. Mr. Delgado stood near the window, invited under the pretense of us celebrating a new partnership. Jenna leaned against the wall with crossed arms, and Erica pretended she had just dropped by after work, though she held a slim briefcase that meant she was fully prepared. Everyone was here. Everyone who needed to be. Ryan cleared his throat dramatically and clinked his glass. Before we order, he said, smiling proudly, I just want to share some exciting news. We're moving forward on renovations, making the house a family project, and Chloe, sweet, responsible Chloe, has offered to co-sign. She wants to support us. I'm honestly touched. My mom sniffled. My girls working together, I knew you'd grow out of that childhood rivalry. Chloe gave a small, demure shrug, like she hadn't rehearsed this moment in her head 100 times. Ryan kept talking, his voice filling the room with nonsense about equity, family unity, and long-term investments. He looked at me occasionally, expecting admiration. All I felt was numbness. When he finally paused for a breath, I reached into my bag, pulled out a thick folder, and placed it in the center of the table. I actually brought something too, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. A different kind of slideshow about what's really been happening in my home, in my bed, around my daughter. The room shifted, the warmth evaporated, even the lights felt harsher. I opened the folder. The first page was a printed still, blurred gently for Sophie's sake, but unmistakably clear about who was who and where they were. Chloe's hair, my bed, Ryan's hands. My mom gasped so loudly the room echoed. My dad inhaled sharply, like someone had driven a fist into his ribs. Chloe's face drained completely, lips trembling. Ryan's jaw fell open, then clamped shut again as if he could force reality back inside. I flipped to another still and another. Their secret wasn't secret anymore. They recorded themselves, Jenna muttered from across the room, disgust coloring every word. I kept going. I showed the refinance papers with Chloe's name neatly typed under mine. I explained the pressure, the manipulation, the lies about fairness. I told them about Sophie overhearing their whispers. I told them about the trust that protected my home. Erica stepped forward. Legally, she said calmly, projecting her voice, neither Ryan nor Chloe has any claim to Maya's property. Not now, not later. They pushed her to sign documents that would have compromised her asset security. That alone is grounds for attempted financial abuse. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. Chloe, tell me this is fake. Tell me your sister is misunderstanding. It's real, I said quietly, all of it. Mr. Delgado cleared his throat, deeply uncomfortable but resolute. And just to clarify, he added, Ryan is not an owner of my restaurant. He never has been. Any impression otherwise has come from his own exaggerations. Ryan whipped around. Delgado, come on, don't do this in front of everyone. I'm stating the truth, Delgado replied, folding his arms. You're an employee, nothing more. Ryan's shoulders collapsed inward. His fantasy kingdom evaporated in the span of 10 seconds. I took a steady breath. I've already filed for divorce, I've already filed for primary custody, and I'm not refinancing my house, ever. My voice shook, but it didn't break. Chloe is no longer welcome in my home until she acknowledges what she did, not just to me but to my daughter. Chloe began to cry, covering her face with her hands. Maya, please, please don't do this here. Ryan sputtered, we can fix this. We can work it out privately. You're humiliating us for no reason. For no reason, Jenna snapped. You cheated with her sister in her house. My dad stood slowly, the scrape of his chair loud and final. He walked around the table until he was beside me. Maya and Sophie will stay with us, he said, voice firm, steady, grounding, until this is over. For the first time in my life, my mother had no words. I gathered the folder, slid it back into my bag, and walked out, leaving them to sit in the ruins of their own lies, exposed beneath the warm lights of the room Ryan once believed he ruled. Today, I understand that sometimes power isn't something you seize. It's something you reclaim when the truth finally arrives with its hands full of evidence. Over the next few days, my phone became a tiny, buzzing courtroom, one where I was somehow the defendant in a crime they committed. Every few minutes, another message lit up the screen, another accusation, another attempt to twist the truth until it strangled me. Apparently, I wasn't the woman whose husband slept with her sister in her own bed. No, according to them, I was cold, dramatic, destroying the family, making a scene, and my personal favorite, refusing to heal. Ryan's first message came at 6:13 a.m., long and frantic, paragraphs stacked like excuses on top of each other. Maya, I cannot believe you humiliated me like that. In front of Delgado, in front of everyone, you jeopardized my job, you jeopardized our daughter's future. You should have talked to me privately. You blindsided me. We could have fixed this. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement of what he'd done. Just blame, blame, and more blame. He sent another message a few hours later. I'm a good father. You're using Sophie as leverage because you're hurt. The audacity almost made me laugh. Then came Chloe. Her voice notes swung like a pendulum, sobs in one message, rage in the next. Maya, please, you're ruining everything, she cried in one. Ryan and I didn't mean to hurt you. We just fell in love. You can't punish people for their feelings. Then minutes later, you stole my chance at happiness. You always get everything. For once, I finally found something that was mine. As if my husband was some clearance rack prize she got to claim first come, first served. I didn't respond. Then my mom called 3 times. I let it go to voicemail, but she filled that too. Maya, you overreacted. Men cheat. It happens. Sisters make mistakes. Family is forever. You can't just blow up your entire life because you're too proud to forgive. Too proud. That was always the accusation when I dared to have boundaries. I replayed her voice, the disappointment dripping from each syllable, and for a moment a familiar shame tried to crawl up my throat. the shame I'd been trained to feel anytime I didn't immediately bend, apologize, smooth over. But then I looked at Sophie across the room, coloring quietly in the guest room at my parents' house, and the shame evaporated like smoke. I wasn't protecting me. I was protecting her. And that mattered more than any guilt my mother could manufacture. So I didn't reply to any of them. Not directly. Not emotionally. Instead, I saved every message, screenshotted every text, forwarded everything to Erica, who wrote back, "Good, keep documenting, don't delete anything." That afternoon, Jenna showed up with takeout, lo mein, spring rolls, fortune cookies. She didn't knock. She didn't ask how I was. She just walked straight to the kitchen, opened the boxes, and handed me chopsticks. I didn't even make it halfway through the noodles before my eyes blurred and the tears started falling. Those hot, embarrassing ones that feel like they come from somewhere below language. Jenna didn't flinch, she didn't rush me. She just sat there at the tiny breakfast table, letting me cry into a paper box like it was the most normal thing in the world. After a while, she nudged my knee with hers. "Listen," she said, voice low but solid. "They can say whatever they want. They can rewrite the story 1,000 different ways. It doesn't matter. You have proof. You have the house. You have your daughter. You have options." Options. The word felt like oxygen. Later that night, after brushing Sophie's hair, tucking her into the guest bed, and answering her quiet questions, "Why is Daddy mad? Why is Aunt Chloe sad? Are we staying here forever?" I finally sat on the edge of the borrowed mattress and just breathed. When she drifted to sleep, I stepped into the hallway, opened my laptop, and stared at the blank screen. My fingers hovered for a moment. Then I started typing. Not about heartbreak. Not about betrayal. Not about Ryan and Chloe and the hollow roles they wanted me to play. No, I drafted a post about expanding my party planning business. New packages, spring bookings, a soft announcement. If they wanted to cast me as the villain in their story, fine. I'd rather write my own. Today, I understand that the moment you stop defending yourself in someone else's fiction, you get to start creating your reality instead. Mediation day felt less like a courtroom and more like a flimsy stage, one built of cheap paper where every document rustled like a scripted line Ryan thought he could force me to deliver. The conference room was cold, early bright, and smelled faintly of stale coffee and the plastic from the mediator's file folders. A long rectangular table sat in the center like a battlefield. Erica and I took one side. Ryan and his lawyer sat across from us. I could feel the tension vibrating in Ryan before he even spoke, his knee bouncing under the table, his fingers drumming against his legal pad. He wouldn't look at me, only at the mediator, like if he avoided my eyes long enough, the truth might rewrite itself. I placed my folder on the table. A photo of Sophie peeked through the clear sleeve, her smile like an anchor in all this chaos. Inside were copies of the trust deed, the refinance documents, the videos, and every screenshot Erica told me to save. The mediator cleared her throat. "Let's begin." Ryan's lawyer jumped in immediately, smoothing a hand over his tie. "My client is seeking shared custody of their daughter and a fair division of marital assets. They were building a life together, making joint financial plans. We believe the house should be considered part of that shared future." The house. Always the house. Erica didn't flinch. She simply reached for the trust documents and slid them forward with the calm precision of someone placing a checkmate piece on a board. "The house," she said, voice steady, "was never marital property. It is part of an irrevocable trust transferred before the marriage in Maya's name only. It cannot be refinanced or retitled without her explicit notarized consent. The recent pressure to do so," she tapped the refinance proposal, "could be construed as attempted financial manipulation." Ryan's head snapped toward her. "Manipulation? Are you serious?" I kept my eyes on the mediator, not him. The mediator nodded slowly, reading. "This trust is airtight. The property is clearly separate." Ryan's jaw clenched. His lawyer cleared his throat again, flipping to his next tab. "Moving on to custody, Ryan is a very hands-on father. He feels Maya's move to her parents' home without consulting him was alienating and confusing for the child." Hands-on father. The phrase made something bitter rise in my throat. Erica didn't let the moment breathe. "We have documentation showing otherwise." She opened another folder. "Ryan frequently missed pickups, school events, doctor appointments, often without notice. Additionally, we have texts confirming that many of his late nights were spent with Maya's sister, not at work." Ryan slammed his palm lightly on the table. "That's taken out of context. I was doing the best I." The mediator lifted a hand. "Let her finish." Erica continued, composed. "Given the emotional upheaval and the involvement of a third party, We propose primary custody for Maya, with generous visitation for Ryan, conditional on him keeping Sophie away from any romantic cohabitation with Chloe for an appropriate adjustment period. Ryan's face reddened. You can't dictate who I live with, that's not fair. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently, Given the evidence, this is reasonable. You don't want to push this. Ryan pulled away, shaking his head. This is ridiculous. She's turning everyone against me. I have rights. But the mediator's expression was cooling by the second. What once might have looked like sympathy for a distressed father now shifted into something harder: recognition, judgment, disappointment. Mr. Collins, she said, the evidence strongly contradicts your narrative. The proposed schedule is appropriate. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I just breathed for what felt like the first time in weeks. By the end of the session, the tentative agreement was set. I kept full control of the house. I retained all rights to my business. Ryan would have structured visitation, supervised at first, gradually increasing. No overnights with Chloe. No control over my finances. No more pretending. When we stepped into the hallway afterward, Ryan leaned close enough that I could smell the bitterness on his breath. You're ungrateful, he muttered. Chloe is the only one who ever believed in me. For once, the words didn't pierce, they didn't even sting. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Today I know that when someone calls you ungrateful for protecting yourself, what they really mean is, you stopped letting me use you. While Ryan and Chloe spent their days clawing at group chats and family threads, trying to repaint themselves as misunderstood lovers and me as the villain who destroyed the family, I did something quieter, something steadier. I built a life they couldn't touch, a business with my name on the contract and my daughter as my reason, not my leverage. Returning to my house felt strange at first. It was technically still the same space, the same walls, the same windows, the same faulty hallway light that flickered every few minutes, but the air felt different, thin, haunted. Every object carried a ghost of something they'd said or done, every room a reminder I didn't ask F. So I started fresh. I rolled the living room furniture into the hallway, spread a tarp, and repainted the walls a warm cream, the color my grandmother always said made a home look forgiving. The old couch, the one I kept imagining Chloe sprawled on, laughing in the videos, went out to the curb. I bought a new one in a soft blue fabric, something that didn't remember them. I replaced the bedding too, new sheets, crisp and cool, a comforter that felt like a clean breath. The bed didn't sag the same way anymore, it didn't whisper lies back at me. Then I opened the door to Sophie's old playroom. Dusty crayons, a bucket of mismatched Legos, a tiny plastic kitchen set where she once served me wobbly toy pancakes. I sat in the doorway for a long minute, letting the memory settle, then began clearing space. If I was going to rebuild from ashes, I needed a workshop. A desk went against the wall, bolt boards for color palettes, shelves for ribbons and banners and sample decorations, file bins for invoices and contracts. The room filled slowly with the smell of fresh paint, new paper, and coffee that stayed warm on a coaster while I worked long after Sophie's bedtime. It didn't smell like betrayal. It smelled like beginning. Word spread faster than I expected. First, it was two moms from Sophie's school texting me, Hey, I heard you planned that amazing party even though everything went crazy. Any chance you're available next month? Then a local dentist's office contacted me wanting a family-friendly event. Then a bakery downtown asked to collaborate. It was funny in a twisted way. My personal disaster had become my professional advertisement. Well, at least your chaos was organized, Jenna joked one afternoon as she helped me unload pastel props from my car. I snorted, glad someone thinks so. Jenna joined me part-time, taking photos, handling social media, managing inquiries when my brain felt too full. She had a gift for angles. She always managed to photograph events beautifully without ever putting my face in the frame. My business tag climbed steadily, one discreet post at a time. At school pickup, another mom approached me. You're Maya, right? The party woman who saved my friend's kid's birthday? She said you're amazing. The words prickled something warm in my chest. The party woman. Not Ryan's wife. Not the woman who got cheated on. Just me. Erica recommended a small business advisor, a calm older woman with silver hair and thick glasses who spread spreadsheets across her desk like a fortune teller laying out tarot cards. You've got something here, she said, tapping the projected growth line. It's modest now, but extremely stable. If you separate your accounts and tighten your workflow, you could expand next year. Expand. The word felt unreal. But every morning my inbox grew. Every week another deposit landed. Every time I saw Sophie carrying balloons around the house like pets, giggling, I remembered, this business wasn't born from tragedy. It was born from survival. Late one evening, after setting up a sample birthday theme in the living room, rainbow balloons framing the TV, glitter banners pinned temporarily with tape, I heard Sophie's soft breathing from the guest bed. She'd fallen asleep under the arch of balloons like it was a protective dome. I turned off the lights one by one, the glow shifting across new walls, new furniture, new beginnings. My laptop hummed quietly on the kitchen counter, an open spreadsheet waiting for me. And then it hit me. I had gone an entire day, maybe more, without thinking about Ryan, without flinching at Chloe's name, without replaying the videos or the lies or the humiliation. All I thought about were bookings, color schemes, deadlines, clients, and Sophie's laughter. For the first time since everything shattered, my future didn't feel like something I had to guard. It felt like something I could decorate. Today, I understand that sometimes rebuilding isn't about what you lost, it's about discovering what you were never given permission to create. I didn't see their breakup happen. There was no dramatic scene, no thrown suitcase, no screaming match in a parking lot. Instead, I heard about it in pieces, three different people on three different days, each version sadder, smaller, and more predictable than the one before. It was almost funny how quietly a love story can implode when it never had a real foundation to stand on. Months had passed since mediation. In that time, Ryan and Chloe moved into a small apartment on the east side of town, the kind with thin walls, mismatched carpeting, and a balcony facing a parking lot instead of a view. Their move became the whispered scandal of every family gathering. My mom pretending everything was normal, my dad refusing to touch the topic with a 10-foot pole. They're adjusting, my mom would say, stirring her tea a little too hard. Young couples go through things. My dad would grunt, cut his steak, and change the subject. Act to literally anything else. Without my house, my inheritance, or access to even a fraction of the stability he once took for granted, Ryan started to slip. It began slowly, fewer hours at the restaurant after a new manager replaced someone who used to let him skate by. His attitude, his lateness, his scheduling emergencies around Sophie's visits, the restaurant simply didn't bend around his excuses anymore. Chloe wasn't doing much better. Her job history, unstable positions, late arrivals, unexplained absences caught up with her. She texted my mom once about being unfairly targeted by a supervisor who didn't get her. My mom repeated it to me like it was a tragedy. I didn't comment. Meanwhile, the fantasy they'd built, the one where she became Sophie's new mom on weekends and they lived some picture-perfect life funded by my house, started to crumble under the weight of rent, bills, groceries, and Ryan's child support payments. Love might forgive many things, but it doesn't pay utilities. Jenna was the one who delivered the first real crack in their facade. She leaned across my kitchen island one morning, sipping coffee, and said, "So, Chloe told Lauren that Ryan's drinking more, says he's depressed, says you're the reason." I raised an eyebrow, me. Yep, apparently you ruined his financial stability by keeping your own house, and you're trying to make him look like a bad father. And, she added with a grimace, he's jealous of your business, says you got lucky. Lucky. Right. I didn't feel vindicated. Not exactly. It was more like hearing an echo from far away, something I used to care about but no longer had the emotional energy to chase. The prince Chloe thought she stole had turned into a sinking stone tied to her ankle. The next sign came during my dad's birthday dinner. We gathered at my parents' house, the table set with mismatched plates and the smell of roast chicken filling the room. When the door opened, Chloe walked in alone. Her eyes were swollen, mascara smudged under them like bruises of her own making. Ryan needed space, she muttered, dropping her purse onto a chair. After everything I've put up with, he just needed space. My mom hurried over, fussing like a mother bird. Sweetheart, relationships are hard, he's just stressed. My dad caught my eye from across the table. His look wasn't cruel, it wasn't triumphant, it just said, you see, you always saw. I nodded once. A few weeks later, I got an automated email from the court portal. Dry, clinical language. Ryan Collins is behind on support payments. Enforcement actions have been initiated. I stared at the screen, waiting for guilt to rise, but it didn't, not even a flicker. I felt nothing. The system was doing its job. I didn't have to carry that weight anymore. The final confirmation came the way these things often do: social media. One night while uploading invoice receipts, I idly checked Instagram. Chloe's relationship status had quietly changed. Photos of her and Ryan smiling in dim lighting, holding hands at cheap restaurants, posing in front of their cramped apartment were suddenly gone. In their place was a black and white quote. Sometimes the people we choose ruin us more than the people we're born with. And in her story, a single line. Men who ruin sisters never win. No names, no details, but the meaning was unmistakable. Karma didn't arrive for them as dramatic fireworks. It wasn't loud. It wasn't public. It came slowly, like a roof gradually caving in board by board, until the whole structure sagged under its own weight. One evening, I sat on my porch watching Sophie draw chalk hearts on the walkway, her tongue poking out just a little in concentration. The sky was soft pink, the air warm, her laughter floating around me like something pure. And I felt a mix of things. Not triumph, not cruelty, not satisfaction in their misery, just clarity. Their unhappiness was never mine to prevent. Their happiness was never mine to maintain. Their collapse was never my responsibility. For the first time, I finally believed that. Today, I know that letting go of someone else's choices isn't cold, it's freedom. A year later, the sound of children screaming with joy filled my backyard again. High-pitched shrieks, running footsteps on the grass, balloons thumping softly against each other in the breeze. Confetti clung to my hair like tiny celebratory reminders, and as I stood under the sunlight, I realized something quietly astounding. I wasn't bracing for anything. No tightness in my chest, no scanning the driveway, no dread curling in my stomach waiting for someone to walk in holding hands with my husband. I didn't have a husband anymore. And I didn't miss the role one bit. It was Sophie's 7th birthday, and the yard looked more magical than it ever had when I used to plan these parties for free. A DIY balloon arch spiraled over the dessert table, pastel and swirling, anchored by a discreet little sign with my business logo at the bottom corner. Clients I'd worked with this past year mingled with neighbors, faces from the school, from the restaurant, from community events. "Your setup is gorgeous," one mom whispered as she passed me a plate. "Do you travel?" another asked, half joking. I smiled, handing out cupcakes and directing kids toward the craft table I'd built from scratch after my first busy season. It felt surreal to host a party in my own backyard and not feel like a stranger inside my own life. Ryan arrived exactly at the time outlined in the custody agreement, 4:15 p.m., with a modestly wrapped gift and a hesitant smile. "Hey," he said, hovering on the patio like a man afraid to leave too deep a footprint. "Hi," I replied, keeping my voice polite but distant. He stayed on the edges, supervised by circumstance as much as by the arrangement. Parents glanced his way, some recognizing him from the restaurant, others from whispered conversations. He didn't try to insert himself, didn't try to charm anyone. He seemed smaller now, deflated, not the man who once strutted through this yard like he owned it. He gave Sophie her gift, got a quick hug, and then quietly stepped back again. Chloe didn't come. She sent a card with glitter butterflies on the front. Sophie opened it, said, "Oh, that's nice," and moved on without another thought. My mom, surprisingly, was silent all afternoon. She didn't critique the decor or question my choices. She sliced fruit, refilled lemonade pitchers, tied napkins around forks. Every so often, she looked at me with something that resembled apology or maybe regret. I didn't analyze it, not today. My dad manned the grill like he was hosting a block party. He practically shouted over the sizzle of burgers, "My daughter does this for a living now. She's booked solid through the end of the year." He wasn't bragging for me, he was bragging about me, and that difference hit somewhere soft. At one point, one of the moms nudged me with a teasing grin. "So, are you dating again yet? Anyone special?" She expected a flustered laugh or a blush. Instead, I just smiled. "I'm busy right now," I said. And I meant more than my schedule. As the sun lowered, turning the yard gold, the kids gathered around the cake, 3 tiers of pastel ombre with tiny edible stars. Sophie stood between me and my dad, her small fingers wrapped around one of each of our hands. Her face glowed in the candle's flicker. She looked happy. Not distractedly happy. Not pretend happy. Just free. We sang, she blew out her candles. And when she turned to me, frosting on her chin and pure joy in her eyes, something in my chest settled permanently into place. After the guests trickled out, leaving behind a sea of streamers and half-deflated balloons, I walked the yard slowly, taking in the mess like it was a portrait of everything we'd survived. Sophie ran circles around me, licking leftover frosting off her fingers. "Mommy," she said between bites, "this was the best birthday ever." She said it once, then again, and again. Each time it landed differently, deeper, truer. Because she wasn't saying it for show, she wasn't cushioning anything, she wasn't protecting anyone's feelings. She just meant it. When she tugged my hand and asked if we could do another balloon theme next year, I laughed, full, warm, unguarded. Today I know that the only approval that mattered was hers, and for the first time I realized she was proud of me too. Sometimes, late at night, that moment still flickered behind my eyes. The moment my sister walked into my backyard holding my husband's hand, sunlight hitting their fingers like some cruel spotlight. Everything had frozen. The kids, the parents, even the wind seemed to pause. But now, when the memory surfaces, it doesn't claw at my ribs or choke my breath. It sits there quietly, like a warning sign I know how to read. It reminds me of the exact second I stopped pretending everything was fine. After Sophie's party tonight, when the last balloon sagged and the backyard was nothing but confetti and crumbs, I found myself at the kitchen table again. Same room, same soft hum of the fridge, same wooden chair, but not the same woman. The faint smell of sugar and candle smoke lingered in the air, sweet and warm instead of nauseating. My fingers swiped through the photos on my phone, today's pictures glittering with color. Kids chasing bubbles, Sophie posing with her cake, Jenna laughing behind the dessert table, and me half hidden in a corner of one photo, smiling in a way I didn't recognize from last year. A real smile, one that reached my eyes. No hidden hands. No sideways glances. No tightness in my chest, waiting for disaster to walk through the door. Just life, just joy, just mine. I leaned back in my chair, letting the silence settle, and in that quiet I thought about the version of me who used to second-guess every instinct, the woman who apologized for asking questions, who swallowed discomfort. Because someone told her she was being too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. I remembered how many times I'd convinced myself I had imagined things, how often I'd rehearsed excuses for them in my head, how long I'd let other people tell me the difference between truth and paranoia. Now I understand what I should have known all along. Sensitivity is not weakness. It's an early warning system. Every time my stomach twisted, it was trying to tell me something. Every time my hands shook, my heart knew before my mind caught up. I wasn't dramatic, I was observant. I wasn't crazy, I was correct. I just hadn't learned yet that I was allowed to act on what I felt. Somewhere across town, Ryan and Chloe were probably tearing into each other again, cycling through their familiar storm of blame and self-pity. Their breakup, their fighting, their unstable living situation, it all happened without my involvement, without my curiosity, without my energy feeding it. Their drama kept circling like a fly trapped in a room I no longer lived in. And that's the part that surprised me most. I didn't hate them. I didn't even think about them unless someone mentioned their names by accident. They were background noise now. Static. No longer the soundtrack of my life. My story had shifted into a different frequency entirely. I looked around my kitchen, my countertops, my cabinets, my walls that smelled faintly of new paint and lemon cleaner. A house that belonged to me in every way that mattered, legally and emotionally. A business built on my creativity, not my desperation. And a daughter who looked at me like I was her anchor, not a woman being tossed around by other people's storms. This was my revenge, not shouting, not exposing, not winning some dramatic battle. Just living a life they couldn't rewrite, couldn't steal, couldn't sign themselves into. Later, as I switched off the kitchen light and walked down the hallway, my steps slowed when I reached the dining table, that spot. The spot where Ryan once slid mortgage papers toward me, smiling like he was doing me a favor. The spot where Chloe stood behind him, pretending to be helpful while imagining herself moving in. I placed my hand on the back of the chair, just for a second. A quiet acknowledgement of the woman I used to be. Then I breathed, let my hand fall, and kept walking toward Sophie's room. Because the only people who live in this house now are the ones who actually deserve to.